Good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you're listening. Welcome to this week's session of Market Movers. Today marks the 25th edition of this space, so a big thanks for everyone to make it happen. I'm Pedro, your host here today, and with me, Boris Ribo, part of our research team. How are you doing today, Boris?
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
So we have just published our Q2 behavior report where we dissected and analyzed the most important behavioral trends and patterns of blockchain users over the last months, especially focusing from the downfall of Terra to an interesting analysis in the NFT space and way more. So stay tuned and most importantly, ask your questions and be part of the discussion. And before we start, I want to remind everyone here that, as always, we'll be recording the session so you guys can listen to this or any of our previous shows on DappRadar's YouTube and Spotify channel, where you will also find hundreds of educational content, market updates, and any other insights from our shows like Of the Blockchain and the AMAs. And also, super important for today event, we'll be giving away some popes, NFT attendant badges. So Cornelia here in the audience will share a link at some point during the session so you can claim your popes. So stay tuned, guys. And I think, yeah, we can begin with the discussion. It all starts in May, right? When Terra, at that time the second largest DeFi ecosystem, collapsed, and we have been talking about this a lot. So we won't dive deeper into that. Just for a context, the Terra collapse started what is being called as the crypto contagion, where we find out that several important actors in the blockchain space, including Three Arrows Capital and several centralized finance platforms such as BlockFi, Celsius, and Voyager, were widely over-leveraged in positions not only in Terra but in other positions in the industry. Basically, they were lending money without having a collateral to back it up. So the situation was not ideal, and the crypto market has since felt that effect a lot. And I would like to start the conversation here, Boris. What were the main behavioral trends that you observed blockchain users behave as a result of the collapse of Terra?
Well, the biggest effect was, of course, in the DeFi. That considering most of the platforms and Three Arrows Capital also were heavily invested in various DeFi dApps, and a lot of the activity happened with the assistance of DeFi tokens. Those have felt the greatest blow from the fallout of this debacle. We've seen an overall a 60% decline um, in TVL since the last quarter, and the numbers continue to go down. As far as overall activity, the transactions in DeFi have also been progressively dropping by 14% from the last quarter and continue on the decline along the same trend with a 14% drop happening since May.
Is
Um,
it fair to say that as a result of Terra collapsing and all the rumors were winding around, the crypto contagion, is it fair to say that the interest in the industry is down, or is it a reach?
no, I think we're not running for the hills yet in that regard. I wouldn't. Uh, I, I will not understate that the effects are profound, but it's not to the effect that, oh no, like this is the end or whatnot. No, we see that overall the transactions along all the verticals, so that's including DeFi, NFT, games, and any other um, types of verticals, whether it be gambling or whatnot, they are pretty much constant in comparison to the last quarter. We've only seen a marginal decrease by even less than a percent. I think it was 0.92% that we're down. So the activity on the blockchain is still present. We also see a positive effect in the metaverse world that has increased its transaction volume by 97% and transaction count by 27%. So obviously the industry is not dying. We are seeing a shift, and we definitely are seeing a lot of people being apprehensive as a result, but the numbers are not indicating that the industry is imploding. Far from it.
No, yeah, it's super fair. Like, it's positive to see. I mean, it's undeniable that at some point engagement and interest in the industry in general, crypto assets and NFTs and everything, has been a bit down, which is natural after such a negative effect. Like, it's a natural behavior. What I'm a bit bullish still is when we compare to, for example, the 2018 crypto winter, which was super different from what is happening right now. Um, the interest is not as down, it's not as bad as it was at that time. As you said, like there's a slight decrease, only maybe 1% or 2% in terms of the number of transactions and blockchain interactions, which is still positive. Yes, there are metrics like number of users connecting to DeFi dApps, which is way down. But still, the TVL is rising up again, if I'm not mistaken here. And there are also positive signs in other blockchain categories, as you were saying. And there is a really interesting chart here in the report that you wrote about engagement in social media, the metaverse engagement in social media. Could you elaborate more on that? Do you see anything in particular happening in metaverse, in the metaverse conversation?
Obviously, yeah, we see that there's been a slight pullback around May time. We see around that time the other deeds for the other side came out, and they were a
Yep.
big boon for the industry. We also saw a very in June. We also saw from Axie Infinity the allowance of staking lands for AXS tokens, which was again also a big boom for the metaverse.
Yep.
Yes, and I would say this a bit contradictory data, because on one side, although the Twitter mentions and different threads are decreasing, we saw in May at the peak of it, we saw around 250,000 mentions, and we've decreased to slightly over 100,000 mentions. So more than 50% decrease. But in terms of actual trade, not just people talking about it, but actual trading activity has increased, both in, as previously mentioned, in the amount of transactions and transaction volume. What's more, I would like to also add very interesting stats when it comes to overall activity. Is that if we compare, yes, 2021 has been a very bullish year, and in fact, the heights that we reached were honestly kind of astronomical. But even after the fall from the all-year heights, we're still up on a lot of the verticals. For example, if we look at unique active wallets, or the average amount of unique active wallets that are present on different verticals, the DeFi is only down by 7%. So obviously, there are still a lot of people interacting with various DeFi dApps.
You mean
Games are,
from last year, right?
yes, from last year, from
Okay.
this same quarter last year. Games are up by 232%.
Well, yeah.
NFTs are up by 48%. And overall, if we combine them together and average them out, we're up by 62%. So overall, the industry activity is still growing.
Yeah, let's shift the conversation towards NFT actually, and something I think was happening in NFTs. Like, of course, during Q4, during the last half of last year, we all know the explosion that NFTs went through. Billions of volume traded monthly on a monthly basis. Then on January, we reached the all-time high with over 10 billions in traded volume in NFTs, with Lux Rare also getting into the picture and so on. And right now, what I think is like it's not that the interest in NFTs is decreasing, it's that the market itself is consolidating, it's maturing. NFT traders are way more mature. Probably they are not overpaying as they were in the first stage. And there is a really interesting report by Cashnet USA where they measure the sentiment across the world of NFTs. Anything in particular you want to mention?
Yeah, I read the report, and we do quote parts of it in our behavior report as well. What's interesting to me is that overall the world is still very much interested in NFTs, and we do talk about how the breakdown happens country by country, continent by continent, and also which collections are present. But just off the top is that one of the most NFT positive or NFT loving countries, a lot of them are in Europe, and the biggest one is Montenegro or
Okay.
Chernogorия. That of all the tweets collected in the last few months, and a fraction of those has been measured, how many of them were positive or negative. Montenegro has 86% positive tweets. Then it's followed very closely by Bosnia Herzegovina and Luxembourg, which have a 78% positive sentiment. And in third place, we had Cuba. Then,
Oh,
hmm?
no. Like,
Yeah,
so it's surprising to hear that list of countries. You would imagine to hear probably the US, the UK, some Western European countries being quite positively engaged with NFTs, but still very bullish to hear these names coming out.
yeah. Of course, NFTs have their own share of haters, and here is the interesting fact to it, though, is that comparatively speaking, the negative sentiment is not as strong overall, because as we saw, the positive sentiment reaches up to 86%. But as a separate statistic, they also measure the amount of negative sentiment. And the most negative country about NFTs was Poland, with 23% negative posts. But
Okay.
the overall amount is still not very high. I mean, I would expect there to be a country that was all negative, like I know 80% negative to is just nothing good to say. So out of everybody in Poland, I would say the majority of the people are neutral, and just the rest probably don't know about them, and we have still a sizable amount of negative tweets. Then on the second place, also very very closely, is 22% in Nicaragua, and in the third place with 19.3% is Belize.
So it's mostly Central America and the Caribbean, along with Eastern Europe. We could say that the regions that are presenting the more challenge to NFTs, perhaps.
Yeah,
Um, which I mean can make sense, although at the same time, something that a trend that we were seeing and observing over the last months, and it's closely related to games, but also to NFTs, because as you guys know, blockchain games are basically based on NFTs. All game assets are NFTs, so they go hand by hand. And actually, I mean, the regions that are mostly adopting blockchain games and therefore NFTs are emerging economies such as Southeast Asia and Latin America. So for me, it's a bit surprising that Central America and the Caribbean are resisting to NFTs. Not so surprising from Eastern Europe, like Kyrgyzstan and Poland and so on, but Central America countries, I would expect them to be in favor of NFTs. Yeah, it's surprising. So this was a sentiment analysis based on Twitter. On Twitter posts, but there is also an interesting analysis based on the interest, the amount of social engagement around a certain topic. In this case, NFTs, and which are the countries that are showing the most interest in NFTs?
Yeah, so this is actually a very interesting part. So despite the amount of countries, because you would expect that the countries that don't like NFTs would not be particularly interested in. And quite the contrary, we saw that, and these are numbers quoted as per capita, the amount of people querying or searching for them on Google per 1 million inhabitants. So these are adjusted numbers. And the most interested country about NFTs is Singapore with 18,717 searches per month.
Okay.
In the second place, we've got Hong Kong, very closely with 15,213. And in the third place, we have Canada with 12,000. Fourth place is Iceland with 11,000. And the fifth place is United States.
Wow, Iceland. I wouldn't expect that either. But yeah, I mean, this makes way more sense. Like Singapore, Hong Kong, Canada, US, like countries that are widely related to NFTs. And I would also expect to see, like, for example, the UK. I don't know where it's in that list, but also UK, France. France, a country that's been pushing a lot towards digitalization, the metaverse narrative. Also, Turkey. Turkey is another country that has been pushing a lot towards blockchain games and the metaverse narrative. So I would expect to see those countries also in the list. I don't know if they appear or not, but that's what I would expect.
Actually, the breakdown by continent is thus. So naturally, as mentioned previously, the most bullish or the most curious continent about NFTs is North America, with US and Canada being and respectively in Canada and the US being respectively in the third and fifth places. I don't know if we should include Iceland as part because it's sometimes debated whether they're part of North America or Europe, but let's include them in Europe for the sake because that's what they do in the
Yeah.
report.
I would.
But in Europe, one of the biggest countries, as I said, they're very small countries, surprisingly enough. So we see Iceland, as previously mentioned, with 11,000. Then we have Malta with 8,810, and we have San Marino with 9,000. But if we look at slightly bigger countries and by their location, generally Western Europe, like if we're looking along the coast, it's mostly the Anglo-Saxon countries. So that would be England, that's the Baltics, and that's the Scandinavian countries that are very curious about NFTs. England being one of the leading countries with 8,300, followed closely by Norway with 8,000. Likewise, we see also Andorra with 7,000. Finland and Sweden both have slightly above 6,000. So these are the very bullish countries. When we go to Central Europe, there are people. The sentiment is kind of ambivalent. Not a lot of. I wouldn't say the interest is not present, but it's not as fiery as in the other countries. So if we look at Germany, we only have 3,000. Austria at 4,000, Czechia at 3,000, and Hungary also just below 4,000. Poland, as well as we previously established, not a very NFT friendly country, but still 3,500 amount of searches for NFT. So overall, in the Central Europe, people are generally averse. One of the least interested countries in Europe for NFTs are surprisingly also one of the biggest adopters and proponents of other verticals in the crypto industry as well. So like Bitcoin, DeFi, and whatnot are countries in Eastern Europe. So Ukraine is, and this is measured before the war. So the beginning of the year, it was 1,800 people were interested in NFTs. Russia 1,200. Fortunately, let's see. There's
Yeah, that's a bit surprising because, as you said, like also like I don't know the Baltic countries, but these are regions quietly related to yeah, I mean innovation, and they were widely involved in crypto since I mean like 10 years ago at least. So it's interesting to see that they are more akin to crypto assets itself rather than NFTs. Yeah, interesting to see. And what about Africa and yeah, I'm curious about Africa. Do you have any numbers of Africa?
So again, the results, I would say the results for Africa should be taken with a grain of salt
Mhm.
because for a lot of the countries, they barely break above 500 searches per month. And in total, if even if you add all of them together, they probably do not come up to more than 1,000 searches for the whole continent together.
Yeah, perfect.
With the exception of smaller places like the Seychelles, for example, I have 4,000, which is comparable to most countries in Europe. The Maldive Islands also are comparable; they have 2,500. I wouldn't indict the countries as having no interest or little interest. I would indict it to a lot of the countries not having high frequency, sorry, or high speed internet, or internet is not available to a lot of the people in the country. So naturally, without having the means to access this part of an economy, people are of course handicapped in the results in
Yeah.
the participation in this industry.
Yeah, it's a bit biased to be fair. Yeah. Valid point. Okay, and you also mentioned like this report is quite complete to be fair. And there is a part that you mentioned about also which collections are doing well in some regions, which ones are most sought out. I would expect, for example, of course, the board apes to be widely popular in the US, right? Whereas, for example, I don't know, Azuki, it might be a bit more popular in other Asian favorite regions. Uh, I'm curious to know what about Axie Infinity assets like NFTs? Where are they being most popular? I would expect, of course, the Philippines and Southeast Asia, but do you have any other insights on that?
Well, on your first point is I wouldn't take that bet because surprisingly for myself as well, that collections like Bored Apes, although they are represented, they do not form the majority of most searched or most interested collections. And on the topic of Axie Infinity, it's actually the most popular collection or the most searched collection on the internet. It is the top search for 112 countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, despite all the fact that running bridge, well, this was no, this was way before the running bridge, right?
Yeah.
So this analysis, okay, yeah, okay. No, I mean it was probably X Infinity Peak, so yeah, makes sense. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, in the second place, we have the Central Land, which
Okay.
is mostly because it's very popular in North America and several places in Europe, like Austria, Germany, um, and Switzerland. In the third place, also surprisingly enough, we have, and I apologize if I mispronounce it, either Sorare or Sorare. I'm not quite sure which is the right
Yeah,
pronunciation.
I mean it's French, so I mean so well, but so rare, it's okay.
All right. It comes as a in a third position, and it's mostly very popular amongst football and sports fans. It's very
Yeah.
popular in the Caribbean, very popular in some of the southern places like in Italy, also very popular in Switzerland as well, France, naturally, and that explains the result, and many other places where football is very popular.
So we could say that when if you're talking to a random person in that world about NFTs, the most probable let's say word that it's going to be coming out is Axie Infinity or Decentraland or Sorare, right?
Absolutely. And the funniest results, like well, not the funniest, but the most shocking results come from Africa, which comes as the most bag. It's kind of a patchwork of different countries liking it. All the NFT collections are represented. Axie Infinity, So Rare, Decentraland, even Bored Apes are represented in a couple of countries. But one of the unexpected results, and if I allow me to pull up the chart here. Uh, the Seychelles is interested in Townstar, a collection I also personally never heard of.
Okay, it's Gala Games. It's one of the Gala Games games of the Gala ecosystem. This farming game. I think it was the first Gala game live. So okay, cool. Yeah, interesting, interesting. Okay. And now talking about blockchain games. Now that we're onto that, blockchain games have been probably the category that's been resisting the most the bear market, right? Despite the fall in crypto prices in-game tokens, people still continue to play blockchain games. And you have listened to any of our previous shows, like we have been talking about the bullish aspects of blockchain games, and one actually is how people remain engaged despite the falling prices of game tokens. Uh, so, talking about the behavioral aspect of games, which could be understood as the amount of players, the amount of blockchain transactions, and so on. What do you see in blockchain games? Any particular behavioral pattern that is forming inside this Web3 gaming ecosystem?
Well, yeah, first of all, some very encouraging news is that the drop since the first quarter in average unique in daily unique average wallets has only dropped by 7%. So for all intents and purposes, we are pretty much continuing unabated throughout the year. The people are there, they're still interested in games, they're still playing. Now, unfortunately, it also bears mentioning that when it comes to NFTs related to blockchain games, so whether it be assets for different games, whether it be your swords, your characters, your whatnots, unfortunately, those have gone down significantly. We've got compared to the previous quarter, we saw a 51% drop in transaction count and an 82% in transaction volume. However, if we compare it to the previous year, the numbers are not as bad, where we see an overall increase in transaction count by 19%. So, despite the fact that we have gone down in physical values quite significantly, we're still up from last year. And also, a very bullish note on that regard is that because people are still playing, which in the end of the day is the most important statistic, whether people are still interested in it, this factoid got picked up by a lot of the investors, and the investments into blockchain games are continuing at the same pace this quarter as it was with the previous one, with 2.5 billion invested. So we're still on the pace. We're still continuing the pace set by the previous quarter, and hopefully there's going to be more happening in the next one. We already increased our projections for this year from overall investment of 10 billion to 12 billion, and hopefully we're going to increase it again next quarter.
Yeah, which is not necessarily a blockchain user behavior trend, but more of a BC blockchain behavior trend, which I mean can be related as well, and also shows how Web3 games and blockchain games are becoming the bright spot of the industry, which is great to see. Cool. So maybe let's stop here for a bit and wait to see if any of our audience wants to join the discussion or have any relevant question. Feel free to join. There's no dull questions, so don't be shy and join us. In the meantime, while people decide to raise a hand or not, why don't you tell us more about regulations, Boris? Because another result of Terra and how the blockchain users are going to be behaving and being affected is how their countries are reacting to regulations.
Oh,
And I think this is going to be a topic, a conversation that it's going to be ongoing for the next months or years.
yeah. I apologize. I momentarily misheard you. I thought you meant radiation. I was like, well, we're not there yet, thankfully.
No.
Yeah. But in terms of the fallout regarding regulation, pun intended in that regard, is that unfortunately, because when Terra collapsed and the loss has been, well, monumental, we lost by majority of the counts calculating that around $40 billion worth of burnt assets as a result. So not an insignificant number, and in fact, it was large enough for the regulators from Europe and across the pond in the US to take notice, and they realized that this unabated behavior cannot continue, since not only have retail investors suffered, but also a lot of venture capitalist investors have suffered. And as a result, so far, both regulators, as part of the SEC, and the European representative by the Federal Stability Board, or the FSB, have both, as a result of collapse of Terra in late May, they both have been on record saying that they will present regulation, at least in the US so far. They have doubled the amount of oversight members that are assigned to crypto. They will be using existing regulation where appropriate. So if they can use the regulation concerning various stock and security activities, they will use that. If the regulation applies to IPOs, then they will use that regulation concerning ICOs. And again, where there's parallel or applicable regulation already written, they will try to assign that, because it's easier to use something that exists than writing new regulation from scratch. But they have gone on record saying that they're already drafting various bills to control and regulate the stablecoin market. When it comes to Europe, the Federal Stability Board has said that they will also make their proposal, and they will publish this proposal in October. Now, for many people, this sounds like a big alarm bell going off. And by some accounts, I would agree that yes, this is significant. As part of our 2008 crisis, when you saw the profound effects that it had on the industry, the ensuing regulation
Yeah.
was Dodd-Frank, which
Yeah.
completely upended all the industry and revamped the way we do business in the stock market. So
Yeah,
by
and,
some
and the
accounts,
and the and the Basels, also the Basel for liquidity provisions for banks. We saw a new era of regulations coming from traditional industry, and I see something similar happening right now.
and you're not alone in that opinion. A lot of people are afraid that this may be the end of crypto as we know it, and the industry will essentially cease to be the exciting Wild West that it forever was, where people have boundless creativity and anything goes, and it's going to be turned into the stuffy industry which banking is today. Personally, I would not go that far. We haven't seen what they're proposing. We haven't seen how much of it is actually going to be implemented or how it's going to be implemented. So I wouldn't run for the hills just yet. If anything, it may also, not only are we going to see the provisions, those provisions are going to be debated and then rewritten. So it may be still years before anything actually goes into
Yeah.
effect.
Still, it will be interesting to monitor the status of, for example, countries like Portugal, which is widely open in terms of cryptos. How would they react? Would they still become and still be crypto friendly? And also super interesting to monitor the status of Japan and North and South Korea. Yeah, South Korea, where they have been advocating for crypto and accelerating their policymakers in terms of regulating cryptocurrencies and digital assets like NFTs. However, since the act of Do Kwon of Terra and all the people that were affected as a result, I would expect those countries to be way more strict in terms of crypto regulations. And in that regard, it would probably disincentivize people in those nations to keep using assets. I don't know. Still, it's too early to tell, but something that we on DappRadar will keep an eye on and will keep continue monitoring throughout our next report.
Actually, to that regard, I have a bit of a controversial take. In we have seen, and I think it's also known that we unfortunately do see a lot of fraud going on. And essentially what happened with Terra, it highlighted a lot of unsavory practices on a lot of levels, from fund managers to different engineers for projects, and we just see there's a lot of unsavory character. So what potentially can happen is a little drop of poison can be the cure. If perhaps we have a little regulation, it would do at least somewhat to change the image of the industry and say, hey, now everything is fine. Now we have put some barriers that the bad actors can be flushed out a lot easier. It will be a lot better to report anybody who is doing anything wrong. You can check who the person is, so you're not always dealing with an anonymous 3-letter word somewhere, or just a string of numbers. There's actually a real person behind this, and you can verify who you're dealing business with in the end. Of course, to some people, this is sacrilege, because anonymity, decentralization, they're the cornerstones of the crypto industry, and I completely understand that. And I think finding the golden middle that satisfies the need for anonymity and freedom, and on the other hand, where you can still, to a certain extent, verify the counterparty and their standing and their moral character.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bit of a black hole, I would say, still. Long road to go. Long road to go until we get to that point. But yeah, I mean, I gotta agree to you to some extent. Definitely. Just closing on regulations and going to our final topic of today. Why don't we give our audience shed some light on the demographic analysis that we did coming from our own traffic? What are we seeing? Which are the most popular age ranges? What is the age of our audience? What is the sex of our audience, and so on? Any particular details you want to disclose?
Well, for one thing, is that the biggest shift, at least when it comes to demographics, that we found is that the young people have taken over. In the previous quarter, we had around 15% of people were from the boomer generation, that people who are age 55 and up. And they have been significantly reduced from 15 to only 3%. And the ensuing percent have been then divvied up amongst the other three demographics. The major demographic now are millennials, so those are people who are 26 to 45, and they represent the biggest core of our audience. Then we have in the second, nearly just shy of 30%, which is 29.3, if I'm not mistaken, are the Gen Z generation. Those are people who are 25 and below. Then we also had a slight increase, just a marginal increase of a few percentage points in the Gen X generation. Those are people who are 45 and 55. And they are also form a very small part. They're around 10% now, but they used to be around 14% in the last quarter. So in the coming years...
No, sorry, I think it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because, like, for example, you're talking about boomers, which are, let's say, yeah, the older, not the oldest, but people like age 45 plus. They tend to be more risk averse. And right now, the industry, let's be honest, it's quite volatile. So I could say that they probably are restraining themselves for being quite involved at this point in time in this. And this is something that we are also looking at as a general trend in NFTs. Why the NFT trading volume is down? Because people are probably trying to place safer bets to that extent. So yeah, it could make a lot of sense. And on the other hand, it's quite positive to see the engagement of Gen Zs and millennials grow up. I mean, right now, us millennials are at a point where we are financially free, where we are at a point of our lives where we can start deciding where are we going to be investing on and putting our money for retirement, probably, or simply for investment. So it's great to see that type of engagement growing, and also for Gen Z's, still the second most dominant group, and a group that it's widely driven by social media content. Like they dominate TikTok, Instagram, and so on. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's also, I could say, positive. Yeah, positive insight, demographic insight for the industry in general.
Yeah. So our time is now. Yeah.
Our
But
time to shine, yes.
yeah. But in terms of other statistics, which is very like the gender disparity is still pretty much constant. It's split just shy of 80-20, and is actually growing more stark. As that in the previous quarter, the split between male and female was 77.2 to 22.8. Now it's even more stark to 79.5 percent male and 20% 0.5. So it seems that for one reason or another, the females are leaving the sphere, which is, of course,
No,
very, very sad.
no, and again, I could say it's more about risk aversion. Uh, we want it or not, women are less risk averse than men. That's definitely for sure. So
Covers.
I think, yeah, I think that could be also an explanation of why women were less engaged at this point in time. Because a positive thing, I've been assisting to some events around Europe, metaverse, NFT, Web3 events in general, and I see the participation of women actually increasing. And if we see artists, NFT artists, women artists are also becoming more and more visible. We have Jankaran, the World of Women, and so on. So it's increasing. So I would again associate that dump in women participation over the last months as a result of a more volatile and more risky environment for crypto.
And the last two tidbits of statistic usage that I'd like to highlight, one major and one minor. The minor one is that the site usage based on platform, that being mobile, desktop, and tablet, is pretty much unchanged. We have 50% users are desktop, slightly less than 50%, which again varies between 47, 48 between quarters, is mobile, and always just less and shy of a percent are the tablet users. Now,
Yeah, for that, sorry to interrupt, but good, are you going to add something to the device conversation?
I wanted to, if you want to mention more to it, please feel free to.
No, like for me, it's still a bit unclear what's best, because on one hand, for me, managing all my assets and managing everything Web3 related on a desktop is way safer in my perspective, rather than on mobile. On the other hand, you have like what happened with digital banks like Revolut and so on that you have on their mobile. At some point, that kind of friction and penetration of Web3 is going to be needed, and it's going to be through mobile. So on one hand, I think it's good that our users are still using desktop because it's a safer place. Also, it's still the place where you are going to play most of the blockchain games, right? Especially the heavy ones on graphics like big time Illuvium and so on. But yeah, mobile at some point will be required to get to mass adoption. So it's still a very powerful insight, that mobile versus desktop chart. So
Well,
yeah, just
in that
wanted
case,
to make that note.
I must be the degen because I use it only on tablet.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, because it's a perfect compromise between it's small enough to carry around and the screen is big enough, unlike the mobile. But then again, it's surprising to me in both cases. And lastly, I'd like to talk about our country split demographic and how it's changed compared to the last quarter. Overall, we saw a slight a setback in some countries and some growth in others. Our leader this time around is still the US of A, where a majority of our users are coming from. Unfortunately, we saw a decrease of just over 30% for one reason or another. But then again, I also can't blame our American audience because there's a lot happening there right now. And my heart goes out to anybody who is struggling there right now. Then in the second place, we have India. And we've actually had a big surge of users from India in the second quarter, especially in May, where 62% of our users came. Russia actually is pretty much unchanged. The only difference is that it's been replaced by India in the second spot, and Russia has been moved into the second. United Kingdom pretty much stayed where it is. Same thing with Indonesia. China actually had a very, very big loss for us because they used to be one of our major audience, and they have reduced their traffic by 53%, which we're sad to see people go. On the other hand, Vietnam, Philippines, and Singapore are pretty much remain constant in their positions, but the overall reduction in people visiting the site has been varied between 16 and 30%. And lastly, in the 10th place, Germany has been ousted by Japan. And the difference there is that Japan pretty much remained constant. Actually, the audience increased by 1%. And we've seen quite a significant reduction from people visiting us from Germany by 30%.
I'm curious to learn more about the Indian search, whether it's Polygon related or any other topic, because we will talk about this next week. But Polygon is doing interesting stuff. They partnered with Disney to launch a Web3 not startup, but accelerator program. We have been talking about how the footprint of gaming is increasing on Polygon. So really curious to, and of course Polygon, our Matic is an Indian-based project. So very curious to see if that's the result, the main driver of the Indian search, or what is it? Yeah, something to analyze maybe more in detail. Okay, so I see a hand raised. Alex, jump to the stage, please.
Hello? There we go. Hello, Alex.
Hello, sir. How are you today?
Hey, yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
So, in the near future, what are you focusing right now, and what the marketing strategy do you have?
You're talking about DappRadar in general?
So, in the near future, what are you focusing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're talking about DappRadar. So, okay, yeah, let's deviate a bit the conversation from the behavior report, and let's talk about a bit about DappRadar. So we launched the single token staking a few weeks ago, and with that, we became a pioneer of cross-chain staking, which means that you could stake your Radar tokens on Ethereum and claim your rewards on Polygon, on Binance, basically gas-free. And that is one. Then we are about to launch at some point a mobile application. And with that, we will have a revamped product, which will be focusing on improving the user experience for all of you guys. We have a lot of things happening also on the DAO and the contribute to earn model side of things. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose any major details on that side. And on the marketing strategy, we are going to, and you are going to see next week, we will send our July report on a hopefully more friendlier format for you guys to enjoy it, easier to read, and so on. We are getting more and more traction and more engagement in Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. A big focus on TikTok recently. So that's also a part of our recent marketing strategy. And I mean, yeah, a lot of things to come. Like also on the product side of things, guys are doing a terrific job. We have the NFT valuation tool, which is a machine learning algorithm that tries to estimate the price of the NFTs as close as it could be. We are refining that. We are integrating more collections. Hopefully, we could get valuation for other type of assets like utility or lands at some point in Q4. And yeah, man, like we're literally working on many things, but those are only the tip of the iceberg. Expect more to come, and if you want to stay updated with what are we going to be launching, don't miss our community calls. We hold a community call on a monthly basis, so be sure to follow that. Be sure to follow the conversation here on Discord and on all of our social media. But yeah, I hope that I answered all your questions, and I don't know, Boris, if you want to add anything else.
No, I think you pretty much covered all the bases there.
Hope that answered your question, Alex.
Yes, thank you very much for explain. Thank you very much for the information.
No worries. Thanks for your question, man. Cool. I don't know if there's any other question, like behavior report related or in general. Um, if not, Boris, any let's start closing out the show. Any closing remarks you want to make?
Personally, we mentioned, well, there's one thing that we forgot to mention, and it's, I would
Just
say,
wait 1 second. There's another. Sorry, Sydney app. So, uh, hey Sydney.
Hi, best evening.
Hi. Good evening, man.
hello.
Yeah, it's just a quick question, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
shoot.
sure.
Okay. I want to say thank you for all the information you've shared, and I wanted to ask, are we going to be seeing the Binance Smart Chain anytime soon on centralized exchange that have the DappRadar token?
So you mean that Raider will be listed on Binance?
No, no, not that. For now, if we want to withdraw from Huobi, for example, the only chain available is the Ethereum chain.
Sydney, so you're picking up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I was trying to say on Huobi exchange, for example, if one will withdraw the DappRadar token, the only chain available is the ERC20. Are we expecting the BSC chain, BEP20 chain soon?
I mean, it's difficult to answer that question at this point. It depends a lot of on how the liquidity will fluctuate, right? Right now, we are starting with this cross-chain adventure, so I don't know how it will be with in different exchanges, how the liquidity will flow to different exchanges, but be sure to ask that question in our channel, in our general here on Discord channel, so we can provide you with a more tailored answer once we have a clearer vision on what's happening on that side of that. But please be sure to continue the conversation here on Discord on the general.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate.
Thank you for your question. Cool. So Boris, we were closing. You were
Well,
saying, sorry.
Yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel, and no, it's not an incoming train, is the greed and fear index. For the longest time, the market, understandably, has been very much afraid. The fear and greed index, for those who don't know, is the overall market sentiment based on the market activity, and that's usually measured between 0 to 100, 0 being absolute fear, 100 being absolute greed, and 50 being a healthy market sentiment. So starting near the end of April, we have dropped below 50 and have been under 20 for majority of the last quarter. And near the last week of July, starting from the 20th, the sentiment has been increasing and we passed the 25 mark. So the sentiment is increasing. People are slowly regaining trust in crypto, and hopefully we're going to get back into the normal swing of things very soon.
I totally agree with you. It looks like there is a lot of gloom and doom, and the macroeconomic factors are not making it life easier for us. We know that it's not so far from now that at some point they will announce a recession, an official recession. We know that we are on it, but officially. Um, so yeah, still I think there is, as you say, light of the end of the tunnel. And most importantly, if you understand exactly what the power of cryptocurrencies and the potential of NFTs, how they are proving ownership, and how many businesses can be implemented through NFTs like tickets, like music, and so on. You will understand where the direction of this industry will go. So yeah, be patient and keep learning, keep researching, and yeah, most importantly, stay safe on this space. So yeah, time has run out. Guys, I really want to give a big thanks to all of you for being active here today with us and being active members of our community. Of course, thank you, Boris, for as always for your valuable insights. It's great to have you here as always. And remember, each week at the same time here, DappRadar Market Movers discussing different trends and topics. Next week, we will be discussing what were the main events that happened in July and what are the lessons learned. What can we expect on next month? And also, don't forget to listen to Ian and his AMAs, where he sits with relevant blockchain projects on a weekly basis, and also the Off the Blockchain show that it's live on YouTube and Spotify. And also, guys, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter and social media channels on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube. That would be all for me. Thanks again. I wish you a lovely evening and have an amazing weekend all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye bye.